Is my my microphone is on. Hello, I hope you all had a lovely lunch. I know I ate far too much food, but that's okay. We have a very important panel starting now on ending cyber violence and creating better, safe spaces to protect women online. It's an incredibly important subject, and we've got a fantastic lineup of panelists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the panelists one at a time. You're all going to applaud. They're going to come up politely and take their seats. I'll talk a bit more so that people who are late get a seat at the front. So our first panelist for this topic is Michaela Palladino. Now, Michaela is the online safety head for EU affairs for Meta, which is known more commonly probably as the parent company to Facebook and Instagram, but also had other roles in Meta before she took on this particular job, also combating cyber violence. Before working at Facebook, she was the director of EU policy for the Developers Alliance. Please give a warm welcome to Michaela. Please come and take a seat. And up next, we have a professor of law from the Lincoln Law School, Professor Kim Barker. Kim is an internationally recognized expert on matters concerning technology-facilitated violence against women and girls. Her work has contributed to academic research, policy development, and a stronger legal understanding around the world. Kim, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. And our final panelist for this session is the CEO of a company called Digital Accountability. It's Ask Hesby Holm. Digital Accountability is dedicated to combating online violence and promoting responsible digitalization, as well as promoting human rights. We live in an age of transition, and with that transition comes change, and change presents both opportunity and danger. And from what I understand from going on Ask company website, is that they're there to harness those opportunities, but also ward off those challenges. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much. Now, as you know, we like to start these panels with the IGA perspective, and we get our IGA experts to come up and talk to us about that. So I'm going to introduce IGA's national expert, who's currently on secondment to the European Institute of Gender Equality, and they're very lucky to have her. Please give a warm welcome to the Cyber Violence Project Lead, Dr. Janine McGinn.
Is the mic on? Yes, it is. Okay, so just when we talk about cyber violence, we were referring to multiple forms of cyber violence. So we're referring to diverse forms of violence perpetrated by information and communication technologies on the grounds of gender or a combination of gender or other factors. And we know that cyber violence can occur online and continue to offline experiences, or it can occur offline and then move over to online as well. So we also know that it occurs across multiple applications, across multiple digital platforms and messaging apps. And sometimes victims know their perpetrators, and other times they don't know who is catfishing them or cyber harassing them. So we often don't know who they are. So if we look at the prevalence of cyber violence, so if you look at, we don't have a lot of data across 27 member states. We don't have comparable data yet, but I'll come to that later. But if you look at a survey that was conducted by the Fundamental Rights Agency last year in 2023, you'll see that women are the primary targets of hate speech. And that the posts against women and girls online are more violent than others that are targeted. In that particular study, FRA looked at a lot of different communities and groups online, and women were targeted the most, if you like. And then there's you can find that groups with different intersectionalities and people from different communities are targeted as well online, and young women are exposed at a greater bullying risk to cyber violence. So My line was stolen earlier on. You can't manage what you can't measure or what you don't measure. So in order to manage something like this, we need to find out exactly how much exists. So we need to measure cyber violence accurately, and it's quite difficult to do that. There are quite a number of challenges. So the very first challenge is the fact that cyber violence is underreported. Only 1 in 4 women tend to report cyber violence for various reasons. Fear of repercussion, shame, and for many other reasons. So any data that we do have will really be underestimated. Victims don't always report the experiences that they have. And this is the underreporting challenge. The second issue then, the second challenge, is how cyber crimes or behaviours are defined. So the definitions of cybercrime or behaviours differs across countries and across different platforms. Definitions are varied as they're rooted in national criminal codes, so it's very difficult to compare national data across international standards. Then the third issue is that data from police or crime or data sources is considerably limited at the national level across the EU 27. So the other thing that we face is that data, when we do get it, is not separated according to gender. So the cyber violence laws tend to be gender neutral, even though there has been some progress in this across the member states over the last few years. So what are we going to do about this? Okay, so well, first of all, we've got to understand the experiences. And today we're going to talk about experiences, responsibilities, and solutions. So first of all, we've got to understand the experiences. So we at IGE had to understand the forms that cyber violence takes and how they're defined across member states. So we conducted a comprehensive desktop analysis of existing legal and statistical data sources. And we gathered the concepts used in the definitions. And what is really remarkable, if you look at the concepts from the definitions there, now I'm not going to read them all out because I know Guy will be cutting short on time. But if you look at the concepts that we gathered, say, for cyber harassment there, you'll note that there was very little reference to gender in the concepts. So that's quite remarkable. Okay. So IGE's response, what are we doing about this? Okay. So I suppose over the last year, what I've been doing for IGE and what people have done before me is we have developed a measurement framework proposing common definitions for the 4 forms of cyber violence now criminalised by the EU Directive on Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. So the 4 forms of cyber violence which are now criminalised, and I know there are only 4, there are lots more that will be hopefully criminalised later on, but cyber harassment, cyber stalking, non-consensual sharing of intimate material, and cyber incitement to violence or hatred will now be criminalised, and that's a huge progress. Okay, so we have developed a measurement framework. It's not published yet, but hopefully this week it'll be out. It's just in the last stages of publication. And this will support the 27 member states to gather data which can be measurable and comparable across all 27 member states. So, yeah, and this is the barcode if you want to know a little bit more about that directive. And it's really important that the member states will be obliged now to collect data on these 4 forms of cyber violence. And IGE, the European Institute for Gender Equality, we will be mandated to actually help them and support them in collecting that. And that's what our framework is about. So, responsibilities. So how do we deal with this, and who's responsible for all of this? And the platforms are responsible to some extent, but we individuals are also responsible for dealing with our own privacy laws. So in addition to our agency's work on data collection instruments, we also researched the trust and safety mechanisms of digital platforms and spoke to platform representatives. We acknowledge that a lot of work is being done by the platforms, and I'm sure Meta will tell us a little bit more about that. Michaela will tell us. But there are huge challenges faced. There's a huge volume of data that comes in every day, and also I suppose there's a lot of different users, and we don't know how to identify the users and the ages of users. So IGE, we've just published, and yesterday, if you're on LinkedIn and you're following our hashtag, EGEF 2024, you will see the digital platform brief that we published yesterday, which is the result of those interviews with the digital platforms. So though we acknowledge a lot of work is being done by the digital platforms, we do realize that there's a lot of work to be done still. So this digital platform brief will support platforms in addressing the issues. And the main issue really is that they've got to kind of add a gender-based perspective to their trust and safety policies. So as I said, not all platforms, it's not all the platform's responsibility, it's all our responsibility. And we've got to report what happens to us. We've got to listen to the experiences of individuals and be responsive. So I think today we're going to listen to some experiences from people who have faced cyber violence, and then we'll talk about different responsibilities and look at some solutions. So we have a little Slido for you.
We do indeed. I think there's a Slido, and for those of you who are in the room and those of you who are online, you can scan this QR code and then answer the question, have you or anyone you know ever experienced a form of cyber violence? The answer, if you've got a no, yes, and it was reported to someone, or yes, and it was not reported to anyone. And what we're going to do is we will show you the results of what you guys put in after we hear some floor speeches. But I just want to say thank you so much, Janine, for your time. Thank you so much for sharing this, and also thank you for everything that you do.
Okay, thank you.
So it's absolutely fine if you're getting on with this in the background, but we're going to move on to hear some speeches from the floor. So we have people in the audience who are going to be giving speeches. And the first one is Miljana Chabrilowski. So Miljana is an anthropologist, an expert in human rights, and she's here today representing the feminist collective of Romani gender experts. Miljana and her collective work nationally in Serbia, but also internationally in research, policy analysis, training, but also in advocacy and campaigning work, all for the sake of amplifying marginalized voices. So to tell us a bit more about the work that she does, please give a warm welcome to Miljana, and a mic will appear for Miljana, I'm hoping. There we go. Bravo.
Hello everyone, it's my pleasure being here today, addressing intersectional risk faced by Roma women. As we heard, alarming truth is that 1 out of 3 women is experiencing violence during her lifetime. The risk is disproportionately higher when we are adding that women from marginalized communities, Roma women, when you are women from a third country. We already heard in the first session that socioeconomic status, ethnic minority background, digital literacy affects it. Apart from that, I want to highlight that it is a symptom of broader marginalization. We are aware that this is not isolated phenomenon. It is something that is reflecting historical injustices. Also, we heard that forced sterilization is an issue, and it is still for Romani women. Case law of the European Court for Human Rights is reflecting that. And having that in mind, policies that are developing regarding the cyber violence should include intersectional perspective, should include knowledge and decolonizing knowledge production, and I'm apologizing. Also, they should be focused on 3 pillars: prevention, protection, and empowerment. Prevention in order to decolonize traditional knowledge, to take deep and to be aware of systematic inequalities. Protection when incidents occurs, and proper investigation and accountability, and empowerment in the terms of digital literacy, in the terms of in the terms of better and easier reporting mechanism when it comes to the tech companies. And this is not this is not just technological issue. This is human rights issue, gender issue, and equality issue. And I would like to call all of you to include intersectional perspective and developing policy, to include a Roma women professional when it comes to the creation of policy, and to cooperate all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miljana, for sharing that. It's a really important message for all of us, and I think that when we're specifically looking at problems around collecting data, intersectionality is something that I know that our colleagues in IGA are working at very, very carefully and looking at very closely. Our next floor speaker is Wendy van der Heuvel, and Wendy is going to be speaking to us as a survivor of cyber violence, and I'll hand over to you, Wendy. Please give her a warm welcome.
Okay. 4 years ago, I was working as a secretary in an all-male factory. So I was the only woman there, and I felt happy because all the men were treating me very nicely. That was also 2020, the Corona year, so I was in a divorce with my husband. And at a certain point during the summer, I was in my apartment, and yeah, I was looking for some fun. So I created an anonymous account on a dating app. I say anonymous because I have a higher degree. I know I shouldn't be posting anything with my name on it, with my head on it. I'm smart enough to know that. But little did I know that it wasn't so safe what I was doing. Because there were two co-workers at the office that one day snatched my phone off my desk, and they found the account that I created on the app and the name that I was using. So what did they do? They gathered up that weekend with two colleagues, and they created a fake account pretending to be the man of my dreams. You know, a man with a good job, a nice car. They had lots of data, which man I liked. So, yeah, and then they approached me and they gained my trust. And I thought I was talking to someone anonymously. So I shared a lot of information. I shared sexual desires, fantasies, my lingerie, yeah, you know. That went on for about 6 weeks. And then they went too far in the emails. So I decided that I wouldn't write back. But of course, then they didn't have their fun, that I knew it was them. So one day, one of them, yeah, he viciously showed it to me that it was him with the other colleague who had done that. It was a Friday afternoon, and I completely panicked when I found out that I had told my biggest fantasies to my direct colleague. So the first thing that I did is what every rape victim does, because I felt raped in my head, is that the evidence should be gone. A rape victim takes a shower. I deleted the account. The pictures, the emails, it had to be gone. And then I went home. I don't know how I did that, because I completely crashed. And like I said, I have a higher degree, so I really didn't understand how something like that could have happened to me. I was too afraid to call anyone, not even my friends or anything. And that weekend, I wanted to kill myself, because I knew my life was over. I'm a photographer, I photograph little kids, and who would book me with a scandal like this as a photographer? I also was very afraid that my ex-husband, when he would find out, that he would take my son away from me. So, yeah, I was too afraid to go to the police. Instead, I went to the doctor because I didn't want to go to work anymore, of course. And she gave me psychological aid, of course. And she also advised me to tell everything to the manager at work, which I did. But unfortunately, the management of the company, they had no idea what to do about this. It wasn't even in the company policy or in the contract what to do with sexual harassment. So they made one mistake after the other, and to make a long story short, I was the one who got fired, and the perpetrators still work there as of today. Yeah, and as soon as the resignation papers were signed, I kind of saw what happened. I was too traumatized at first to realize it. But then the injustice of the whole situation just came to me because no one of the company ever asked anything again, how I was doing, or they just swept everything under the rug. They didn't have any negative public attention for the case, so for them it was finished. Yeah, so then I decided to write a book about it. That was the only thing I could do to turn my pain into power. And that led me to finding a publisher for the book, which led me to give interviews about what happened. And so I started sharing my story for other victims. And that's how I came here today, to be the face behind all the graphics and the numbers, and to be the voice for the ones who are unable to speak. The only way to ever feel safe again is to go to the police and report the perpetrators. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I know just how much bravery it takes to stand up and talk about these things. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone. So it's incredibly moving just hearing your experiences, the impact it had on your life, but also a sense of burning injustice, of how can this be the case? How can they still be employed there? And that's why it's really important that we have gatherings like this. It's really important that we hear stories like yours and have panelists such as these. And before I move on to the panelists, I understand that we're going to show the Slido results, which I haven't seen, but I was wondering if we could get those up on the screen. So that's the question. Ooh, interesting. So actually quite a lot of people here said yes, and it was not reported to anyone, because one of the things that Janine and I were talking about earlier is that we thought that being the sort of nature of this conference that it is, well, that's something for us to bear in mind. But I'm going to move on to our panelists. I'll just scoot over here. And I thought I'd get to start off with a question for you, Kim, if that's all right. One of the challenges that we have here, even from a perspective of employment law, is that this is a new type of crime that transcends so many different jurisdictions and so many pre-existing legal structures. How is the legal world keeping up, or is it keeping up, or is it not?
Yeah, it's not, is my short answer. I think now is the ideal time to celebrate the progress we've made. There are some real specific legal provisions and developments. But I think the other side of that we need to be very aware of is that we still have a lot of work to do. We've made progress. We now recognize cyberviolence legally, which has taken, I'm going to say, 20 plus years to get to, which is huge. But the flip side to that is there is still a lot to be done. We've heard about the employment context. We don't recognize this as a problem for employment. We don't see it as an employment issue. We don't recognize it legally in that way, but obviously it is. And so my hot take is we've made progress, we've drawn a line in the sand, but there is much, much more work still to be done to improve everything from reporting, recognition, support, and the trauma, because it's not one-off trauma. The trauma lasts for a lifetime, as most victims will allude to.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And obviously, this is being facilitated in this new digital world that didn't really exist, and understand that your company's mission is to try and make sure that the tech side of things are covered. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, but also how you can, how you think tech companies can be working to look after people like Wendy?
Yes. First of all, we're not a company. We're
right.
just a non-profit. No worries, no worries. But we just released a report where we looked at Telegram. And Telegram is known for private communication, but it's also actually a social media platform. And it showed that in Denmark, up to around 10,000 users are sharing illegal content. Wow. And they're not just sharing it, they are categorizing it. They have this deals, even Black Friday deals, and it's just like a supermarket, actually. And the thing is that Telegram could do so much better, and they could use and employ the technology that we know, and also new technology like AI. So there's a lot of technical stuff and technical solutions that we could use to prevent illegal images for spreading and for keeping the platform safe. And I think I wrote two things that I think are very keen. The one thing is we have to involve all the users and prevent the what's called the bystander effect. Yeah. The effect is that in a big room, nobody would take responsibility and act. And the other thing is that we have to make these demands for better technical solutions, because they are just around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that AI is on the one hand, is the thing causing the threat, could also be part of the solution. So I was wondering, how are you managing that in your role, Michaela? Are you looking much at the potential problems or solutions that AI are giving in Meta?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Meta is a social media company, but it's also an AI company. So we're looking both at AI in terms of preventing the risks and the threat that could occur from the use of generative AI, for example, but also at how we can really harness artificial intelligence to help us in, for instance, moderating content. So we do use AI a lot in all of our content moderation. We have automated tools to help us detect specific abusive behaviors and illegal and harmful content that might be uploaded on our platforms. Because as you can imagine, I mean, Meta owns several platforms, including Facebook and Instagram. There's billions of users on each of these platforms. So it's not something that can be done manually, the review of the content. There is always a moment where human review occurs, but to go through all of the content and surface the problematic ones, artificial intelligence is a great tool that can help us there. And we also get to think about how AI could be used in perspective, for example, with the AI chatbots, etc., as tools that can help users to navigate difficult situations that they might find themselves into. For this reason, actually, Meta open source its AI technology so that it's freely available for anyone that wants to use our models, some of our models, not all of them, to also develop their own chatbots or their own technologies for themselves. Yeah.
And this is an open question for anyone who'd like to answer it, but I think there's a big challenge in getting certain groups of people to see cyber violence with a level of severity that it deserves. And lots of people will still say, well, it's not as bad as this. How do you think we need to be approaching that conversation? I can see Kim leaning forward. Go on, Kim.
I mean, we've got 48 minutes. I could talk for 48 hours, probably, as a response to that. I think the real challenge, and for me, there are kind of three groups. I think the challenge is not just about platforms anymore. I think platforms do recognize that there is a problem. I think those of us in the room recognize there is a problem, but I think there are two audiences which don't necessarily. I would say one is the lawmakers in some states, predominantly, and I'm now going to be blatantly biased, men, white men in particular in some legislatures, which causes a problem when they make the laws and they recognize the harms which these laws need to address. They are dismissive of this notion. And I think the second group goes kind of hand in hand with that, and that is anybody involved in the criminal justice system in any member state. Some offences are very much criminal. Some behaviours are never going to be criminalised, but they are still incredibly harmful. And there is a problem with reporting, we know that. But there is also a huge problem with underreporting. And even when things are reported, the response of the first responder, the first person who that is reported to, who is police, who is an investigator, who is law enforcement, that has got to be taken seriously. It has got to be recognised at that point for victims and survivors and bystanders. And that is a real barrier to getting any kind of traction for any kind of response. Some are great, some are not great. Even when there are great experiences going to law enforcement, that doesn't translate into a great experience going to court. And going to court is not the ultimate response. It's not what some victims want. There are other forms of redress as well. So the justice system needs to be much better at this. And the lawmakers need to be much better at this as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. And how about the interaction between the lawmakers and the tech companies? And this is maybe, I could open it to everyone, but for specifically the two techie speakers we have, do you think there's a strong enough connect between the policies and the technology, and what can we do about that? I can see you shaking your heads.
No, I think that's a big issue, actually, that the IT, the technical persons are not speaking with the lawyers and the lawmakers. And you see, for example, the new Digital Services Act, DSA. Many things are great on writing, but when it comes to reality and how to enforce it, it will be difficult. So we have to figure out how to set these demands on technology. And I don't mean like big technology, I mean like moderation, and be very clear of what do we wish, what is our wish list, how should the performance be. And Meta, for example, they have like a lot of great performance on a lot of tools, and we have to, as people and lawmakers, have to set the same standards. And I think there's something lacking in figure out which technology we want to use and how efficiently they should be, or it should be.
So who do you think should be taking the first step or starting the initiative, or is it everyone?
No, I think the European Commission actually have started taking the first steps, but they need to have some documentation, and they have to figure out how to work and enforce the law, of course, with the platforms.
Yeah, Michaela?
Yeah, maybe I can come in. I mean, obviously, Meta Platforms is designated as a very large online platforms under the Digital Services Act, the DSA, so we're in full-on compliance mode. We are having very regular conversations with the European Commission, which is working on enforcing the DSA. We're seeing that there are some issues that are being tackled first. There is a lot of attention on elections and misinformation. There is attention also on the impact on minors and the protection of minors online, and how the DSA is helping, or how platforms are operating under the umbrella of the DSA in that space. We know that we as platforms have submitted to the Commission also a systemic risk assessment on the impacts of our technologies on gender-based violence as well, highlighting all of the risks that we have identified exist for this kind of violence to occur on our platforms, but also at the same time, all of the risk mitigations that we are taking. We've submitted that to the Commission. The Commission is in charge of overseeing the risk assessment and establishing whether the companies are doing enough or not. We think that in general, this is a framework that provides a good level of clarity when it comes to the expectations from online platforms in this space. These also paired with the directive that Janine mentioned during her initial speech also gives a little bit more clarity with regards to what constitute illegal content of behavior activities online. We can absolutely agree on the fact that probably doesn't go far enough, but at least there's been an effort in defining this kind of harm, so that for us that is easier to operate. But the problem with the law is that often it's just legislating takes a lot of time. And so often what we see in this space is also with people that see this kind of behaviors occurring online is that it's a very adversarial space. So people that are very motivated to do harm online, they will find ways of going around, changing the way that they speak, changing the words that they use so that they can evade detection, that they can evade our systems, and they can still do the harm. And obviously this is something that you cannot regulate, because it's something that it's, you know, regulators kind of play a bit of a catch-up role to that. And so I think that the answer doesn't necessarily lie exclusively. It's important to have very strong regulatory framework to begin with, but the cooperation, the collaboration amongst companies, civil society, experts, obviously lawmakers, is very important here, because it's really where you stay on top of what is happening, you share the knowledge, and then you can respond also in a way that is a little bit more, how to say, kind of quicker, which is what that makes a difference in a lot of these situations. Because, yeah, like also from the story of Wendy, the faster you can intervene, the better for the victim.
So we've got this problem in the sense that technology is by its nature very, very fast, and legal processes are very, very, very difficult to change because of their cumbersome nature, because a change could potentially lead to, not necessarily collapse, but a compromise. So, Kim, do you think they just need to speed up legal changes? Is there a risk to this? How do we make sure they do keep up, or can they even?
I'd love to say they can. I really would love to say we can keep up and get ahead of it. I don't think we'll ever get ahead of it. And I think that is fundamentally the problem. As much as we push, and I say we, I've been pushing for years to try and make progress on this. As soon as we make progress, we're already kind of 10 years behind the next problem, and law will never get ahead of it. But I think what can help is if we have the right flexible frameworks. So we have the right sets of policy responses, we have the right kind of regulatory mechanisms and tools, we can push forward to address problems we haven't predicted yet. If we don't get that right, we've got no chance of solving the problem, which is a really depressing note, and we should not take that forward.
So we're doomed, is the message you're giving us. I think As disagrees with you.
No, I guess we're not doomed.
We're not doomed.
But one thing we could is like demand some design principles that build on safety.
Yeah.
So before putting new technology on the market, test it. And that's maybe some room for improvement due to the DSA, because if you, as I understand it, if you develop a great AI moderation tool on, I don't know, deepfakes, it could maybe be industry standard by law, I guess, because the example from the Telegram, then they should use it, in my view. And maybe if the Commission will go so far, it can set some standards, and that would be great. And the whole thing in building in some design principles, I think that will be not the whole solution, but help it.
I think what you say is very on point. I think there is a lot that can be done also by fostering more collaboration across industry, and there is actually a project that I wanted to kind of highlight in this context, which is stopncii.org, which is a platform that has been created in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, or starting from project there, and launched in 2019. And it's managed by Revenge Porn UK, which is a UK safety organization with a long history of dealing with gender-based violence, and it's also based on technology that has been developed by Meta. It's basically a platform that allows potential victims to use the technology to create a digital fingerprint of potentially of intimate images that they fear might be shared online without their consent. So how the technology works is that you can use the app or the platform to create this fingerprint, and then the fingerprint will be, which is not the image in itself, so you're not sharing a naked or an uncomfortable or picture that you don't want to share with the platforms themselves. You are sharing basically a code, which is a string of numbers and letters. and which is added to a database. And then companies which adhere to the initiative, and all Meta platforms adhere together with, I think, 8 or 9 other companies and over 100 civil society organizations, they will prevent the upload of those images online. So it's a really great tool that can help with one of the biggest issues that we're seeing right now when it comes to gender-based violence, which is image-based violence, so non-consensual sharing of intimate images. And that really stems from the motivation of civil society and companies. We were the founders of this initiative to make things better. So if there's anything that we can do to get more companies to sign up to Stop NCII, we know that civil society is working super hard to make that happen. That could be maybe a step in the right direction for what you were saying, right?
Agree.
We also have the problem that some companies will have these amazing initiatives and take on board that extra effort to keep their users safe. But then there's some that simply won't, and not only won't they know that they're going to attract a certain base because they're not doing it. How is it possible to get around companies that are less willing? Anyone can take that.
I would say lawmakers and fines, they have to find them.
I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, that would be the solution.
Yeah.
I think we've seen it in a couple of legislative examples. There have been a couple of attempts in the UK to capture all platforms based on numbers and size, and the DSA has adopted a similar model. That by default excludes some platforms from being captured within the framework. And as great as some initiatives are from these really big platforms that are more proactive than others, in some respects, I think it's almost those we don't need to worry about. It's the ones that aren't captured we do need to worry about. And if they're not being captured, then we almost need to develop a more stringent framework to bring them within the regulatory sphere.
If I can actually add to that, to this point, is the better. So as Meta, we're very committed to making sure that our platforms are as safe as possible. We don't always get it right, but we try. But what we experience is that the better we get at doing that, the more we are experiencing what we call deplatforming, which means users that stop using our services because they see that they cannot use them. Unfortunately, to do, fortunately, we're very happy they cannot use them to perpetrate abuse, but then they move to other platforms which are smaller, which are less regulated, which the regulators are looking less at. And I think that there is here an element of the role of the enforcement of regulation, which needs to be further explored.
Fantastic. I'm going to let our panelists have a bit of a rest. We'll come back to them, but we're going to move on to another floor speaker, just to break things up and give you guys a breather. We're working you hard. So I'd like to welcome Ellen de Poor. Ellen is the Policy Officer for the Belgian Institute for the Equality of Women and Men and works in combating gender-based violence with a focus on tech-facilitated sexual violence. Can we have a roaming mic? Yeah, sorry. If we could just give it to Ellen, and a round of applause for Ellen. Okay.
Thank you. First of all, I'd really like to say my thanks to those who are here today and have shared their experiences. Thank you, because your stories are really valuable and they are a powerful reminder of the real-life impact of cyberviolence. And it is thanks to these testimonies that we at the Institute were really made aware of the specific need of preventive measures designed and tailored to adults. Because when we think about digital safety or safety online or designing preventive measures against cyberviolence, most of the time we think about children and teenagers as a target group. And it is true, they grew up with technology, they are online most of the time, but adults face those challenges as well. They use the internet. They also become victims or survivors of cyberviolence. And we found that there are still a lot of questions that they have. They have difficulty recognizing what is cyberviolence and what is not. And we've also found that they are really hesitant to take action when they are a bystander and they witness forms of cyberviolence, and especially in the workplace. And it is because of this that we've designed a toolkit designed to help users recognize, understand, and respond to specifically digital sexual violence. The toolkit consists of 20 illustrations depicting various situations and so various forms of digital sexual violence. Forms such as deep nudes, sharing intimate images, online sexual harassment, and so on. And these illustrations are as well in different settings, so in private life as well as in the workplace. And at its core, the toolkit has like 3 main things. First of all, it helps users to assess certain situations, to help them answer the question, is this cyberviolence or not? Is this sexually transgressive behavior? Then secondly, it gives the legal impacts of those forms, for Belgian law, of course. Spoiler alert, most of the time it is punishable by law. And then thirdly, it gives various ways on how to respond in such situations. For example, for victims, there is information on how to report or how to contact several organizations in Belgium to get support or get help with the removal of content. There's information for bystanders as well, how to actively intervene or how to support victims. There is also information for employers, for when it happens in the workplace, with guidance on how to design a policy to effectively prevent and combat cyberviolence. And there's also information for perpetrators to get them to understand the implications of their actions and to help them reflect on those actions and hopefully adjust their actions in the future. We wanted to make this accessible for everyone, so it's accessible online in 2 languages, in Dutch and French. Yeah, it's tailored to the Belgian context, of course. What I really wanted to say is that, yes, it is a preventive measure, it's a tool, but it's also like a form of empowerment. It helps people recognize forms, it helps victims maybe recognize similarities with their own situations, and it really helps people to be an active bystander when they witness it. So it really contributes to creating a safer online environment and a safer use of technology. Thank you.
I've just gone on the Slido and we've had quite a few questions come in, and for those of you in the audience, you'll also get to ask questions. But before I do that, I thought I'd just let you know that someone has left a comment, which I think is directed to Wendy. It said, I want to express my admiration and respect for sharing the personal experience with cyberbullying. Thank you for your bravery, and I wish you all the best. So I thought I would read that one out. Now, Ellen mentioned something very interesting when she was talking about how most people think that it happens to children and young teens, but it also happens. But also there's this entire argument, discussion that comes from that about education. And someone here said, what role should educational institutions and workplaces play in preventing gender-based cyberviolence? How can we educate both potential perpetrators and victims about online safety, respect, and consent? So I was wondering, I'll open that up to anyone from the panel who would like to answer that.
So I think fundamentally the starting point has got to be schools.
Can we turn the mics on, please, for the panelists? Go on, try again if you haven't.
So the starting point has got to be schools, but it's not just schools, right? Because that's a resource issue. And we assume if we say schools will solve the problem, teachers will be well-versed and knowledgeable and take on this additional burden as well. And that isn't just the solution. But there's also a role and responsibility for parents and anybody who is a caregiver in this kind of context. And I'm going to go a little bit controversial and say that every other form of media production has also got responsibility here. We know video games are massive. We know YouTube and online videos are huge and reach these audiences in ways that we probably don't and can't because they are living a different experience to us. So what they see and what they receive and what they engage in these other forms of media is also a huge part of what we can expect these groups and individuals to pick up and then replicate in terms of behavior. So education is important, but that has got to filter across every aspect of society. And it's not just education for children. I would say it's got to be education at every level. So digital literacy is one thing, but also we need part of that to be about safety. And when we talk about safety, I am really reluctant to say that it's for women to learn about women's safety online, because actually that's shifting the burden of this violence back onto women to begin with. It's about everybody. We need men and boys to be involved in this conversation and to take responsibility as well. So it's a holistic educational approach, which has got to be embedded in curriculum and extracurricular and parenting and caregiving at every level. And if we don't get that right, we are not going to solve this problem moving forward.
If I can just add,
Yeah, of course.
I think it's great, Kim, I completely agree. I think that what we are seeing as cyber violence is really a reflection of the fact that in the offline world, in real life world, misogyny and gender stereotypes is very much still part of the discourse. It's just something that people are used to, and people really struggle to even see where to draw lines sometimes and what is okay and what is not okay, which is crazy. And that's why it should be addressed really by broad education at all levels. And there is actually something that, a tool that we have on our platforms that has given us a little bit of a sense of how people might think that certain things are okay, which is called comment warning. And it's something that basically looks at comments as they're being written. And if it detects that there is something potentially harmful in what is being written, basically the users, before they send the comment, receives a message saying, are you sure you want to send this? And we did a test on a specific sample in a specific week a couple of years ago. And what we noticed is that within a week, we served over 1 million of these notices to users that were typing something that was potentially problematic. And that after receiving our warning, over 50% of them had either edited or deleted the message. So there is a lot that can be done to educate users, also through specific tools that are served in specific moments online. It's something that we're studying. We're also very interested in seeing what else can be done, and that can also accompany, obviously, the broader efforts that need to be done a little bit by the educational infrastructures.
I think also a lot of education needs to go into the teachers. So I have a background of working with schools, and you find that teachers are often scared to even approach the subject because they feel that it's an area of knowledge where the students know more than they do, and they don't know how to approach it. Are there any questions from the people in the room? If not, I'll go to another slide here. Well, just raise your hand. We have a question here at the front. If you'd like to let us know who you are and who you're directing the question to.
Hello, my name is Kat. I work as a legal advisor at the Institute for Equality of Women and Men, which is the national equality body in Belgium focusing on gender equality. A key part of our work is to support victims of digital sexual violence so they can report their cases to us, and we provide them with legal advice as well as assistance in removing the content online when their images are shared without their consent. A very important part in this is our collaboration with social media platforms like Google and Meta, because research shows that when content is shared online, it should be removed within 6 hours, because after that it can remain there forever, which causes lasting harm to victims. So my question is, first of all, to Meta, what is your position on this, and how can Meta ensure that these images are removed as swiftly as possible? And then to the other experts is my question, if you have any advice or good practices to share, how we can improve our collaboration with social media platforms. Thank you.
Should we start off with Ask?
Start with me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. How to improve cooperation with the platforms? It's difficult. I think you mentioned the hashing technology, where you have this fingerprint technology, where you put in, when you make a picture to a code and then you can remove it. I think that's a very important technology, and I think that would help preventing the reposting of images. And I think that should be used more aggressively than it's used today. I know it covers some areas, but not every area. the private groups and the private sphere on the internet is not being, in my view, analyzed and monitored, and this technology is not being used as they should, not even for protecting children. So I think there's a huge task in getting companies that are working in these spaces to collaborate. And I maybe think it not should be the way it should not be go one platform at a time, but go to the lawmakers and say it should be like a standard. You have to be able to contact every platform, and they have to react fast and efficiently. Yeah.
I can actually come in. I think for the technology, not only we have Stop NCII, but actually as Meta, we have our proprietary hash matching technology, which is the technology that not only creates this digital fingerprint, but also allows the detection of the images based on those. We actually have made those technologies both to detect videos and photos freely available, so without a license on GitHub. So everyone every organizations or other smaller platforms that might want to use this technology but do not have obviously the financial resources that big companies like ours do, can access that and reuse it to ensure that all different spaces are as safe. And then I wanted to get back to the question that you had about the speed of taking content down. I think that, as I was hinting at earlier, we do use artificial intelligence and automated detection to make sure that we detect instances of violating content. We also use classifiers, which are a different form of technology that basically identify if based on classifies a picture and says there is a specific percentage of likelihood that this picture is a naked picture or that this picture is a vegetable, etc. And those technologies help us enormously, considering the volumes of content that is posted on our services every day. But we cannot always, the technology is also, in some cases, is inaccurate. It detects things that it shouldn't be detecting. And there's always things that get slipped through the cracks because they are images that are previously hashed, but they've been manipulated in a way that the hash doesn't match anymore. So we're constantly trying to address this, but we cannot always get all of the violating images on time. And for this, what is absolutely important is something that we really try to, it's maybe part of the educational exercise, but it's the reporting mechanism. So reporting is not only a problem when it comes to reporting instances of harm to the police, but it's also something that people resist to do or use maliciously when it comes to reporting content online. Reporting content online is absolutely safe, is anonymous. If you report something to us, we are not going to be telling the person that you've reported, whose content you reported or whose account you reported, that you have done so. We wouldn't even tell them if you were blocking them, frankly. So that is a safe way to flag content to us so that we become aware of it and then we can take the appropriate action. It's something that reporting is something that we work a lot over time because it used to be a very complex process, very long, very complicated. You need to click through, not a million times, but a few times, and it was a bit of a convoluted process. We've made it faster, and what we've also done is that we serve the report button not only just on every piece of content or any account that you have online, but also in specific moments in the experience that you have online. So for instance, when you have a new message from someone that you're not connected with, the first thing that you will be given is the option to, if you want, add the person, but also to block or report them, because this person might be trying to contact you with malicious intention. So that you stop for 1 second and you're like, do I want to start this conversation or not? And what this person is writing to me, is it okay or is it not? So that you have that moment to stop and think and then take action.
Fantastic. I'm going to go to one of the questions from Slido, and I think it might be directed towards you, Michaela, but I'm going to paraphrase it slightly.
Okay.
The person in the question is implying that platforms have a false dichotomy choice between profit and privacy. And I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but what would you say to people who suggest that it is a false dichotomy between profit and privacy?
With privacy or with safety?
It just says certain business models that prioritize profit over privacy.
So we are a business. So obviously we're in the business of connecting people, but we're also in the business of expanding the business. But our business would just not stand if users do not feel like their rights to privacy, to safety, are being respected on our platform. So we do not believe that there is a dichotomy there. We believe that it's our responsibility as a huge platform that we are to make sure that we guarantee both the privacy of our users, the safety of our users, the respect of their fundamental rights, their right to express themselves freely, while at the same time also obviously keeping the business functioning. So
absolutely, it is a false dichotomy, but it's interesting that so many people have brought themselves to believe that. I was wondering if one of the other two speakers would like to think, how do we overcome this, or do you think the dichotomy is real?
No, I think when we're talking about there's something that's interesting in the physical world. We are identifiable. That's the principle, and then there's some exceptions when we are voting, for example. But online, it's the other way around. I think we have to move towards an online world where we can identify more people and more situations. I think if everything is locked down and in private rooms that we can enter, we have a lot of problems. And I think what you were talking about also, building filters that will give some friction but will keep us safe instead of just be able to post everything all the time, instantly and free. And then we have to figure out what we do next. We have to build a different model where you can just not post everything all the time. And the fact is, we have spam filters. I think like 80% of all the content Google is removing is spam. And it's so effectively, and it's every day. And that's built in. But we don't build in safety tools that could protect, for example, women victimized of digital violence.
Understood. Kim, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Well, it's choices, right? There are design choices. We can design for safety and include that as privacy, or we can not. And how familiar we are with those tools and those options when they're designed and built in, I think goes to education. Right? Part of education should be educating people about what they can and should do online, but also how to use the platforms, how to use the tools that are built in. Take a minute and think about it before you post it. If you would not say it out loud, why would you post it online? And that's very much an educational kind of message, but that's not just on teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions from the audience? We've got loads of hands up. I'll let you pick.
Thank you very much. I'm Brahim Baalla, a local representative from Italy. I really appreciated the interventions, and I wanted to ask about an issue related to the management of social media. In recent years, we had troubles, for example, related, if I need to give an example, to the ban of a very famous politician, a former president within the United States, and which have been banned for a while from social media. And I wanted to ask about this situation, like where does, for example, we have Dr. Palladino. Where does social media companies draw the line between, in this field, a violation of a basic right or a misogynistic or declaration which can violate the rights of other people, and a legitimate political message or an expression of the freedom of speech. Like within the legal framework, we can give a description of these situations, but like how do the people and realities which are behind the social media framework, how do they classify this border, and about like in which way does it happen? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. Perhaps we'll start off by looking at it from a legal perspective, and I'll turn to my, my legal expert advisor here, Kim.
I think it's a difficult one, because some people would say that what is misogynistic for one is actually free speech or free expression for another, depending where you are. I think misogyny is difficult because legally, in most states, misogyny in and of itself is not a crime. So how you react to that causes different issues. It is undoubtedly harmful, and I would advocate it should absolutely be a crime. But capturing it from a legal perspective is almost impossible. So I think when it comes to where social media platforms draw the line, I would say it's the cumulative effect. How many are you harming with your speech on that platform? But equally, when there are people in certain positions of certain levels of power, arguably there is a right to hear what they say. So I don't think it's really a decision about whether you deplatform them or otherwise. I think it should be a question about the spread of the harm and how we respond to the harm, rather than how we give them a platform to spread their harm. But that's my take.
And of course, there's a really big ethical conundrum there, which is then almost worsened by this perpetual blame culture, where blame is assigned without thinking about the ethical responsibility and how that should be spread. I was wondering if either of you ask or Michaela wants to add.
Just kind of detail on the point of how complex this matter is. It's a very delicate balance, frankly, between ensuring that that the internet and the platforms that a company like mine manages stay safe, but at the same time guarantee freedom of expression. We are ultimately an American company, so we value freedom of expression and freedom of speech very, very highly. But at the same time, we are very, very aware of the necessity to keep our users safe, to make sure that harm doesn't occur to them. And so it's a lot about balancing between our community standards, which are the policies that determine what is allowed and what is not allowed, and how we develop those policies in a way that is very detailed, so that we do not hamper the freedom of expression. I think there is also another point that was made about specific legal systems. We, for instance, we're a global company, so we obviously respond to our legal obligations. We take down content that is illegal in specific countries. We geo-block certain contexts, which means that we make this content available in specific countries, because not all countries agree on definitions of what constitutes hate speech, for instance, what constitutes cyberbullying, would constitute, you name it. So we have to operate in a space that is extremely fragmented. So we have, on top of those legal obligations, what I mentioned is our community standards, which is these global policies, which are designed also with the help of experts, external experts that provide that level of nuance. And as you were saying, in the case of the very president, of the very famous former and to-be president, as Kim was saying, the issue there was really about the potential of violence offline that specific expressions could potentially cause, and the incitement and the harm that could occur as a consequence of that.
Do you have anything you want to add to that, Oscar? Should we give another question?
I'll just say that it's the same issue with traditional media, I guess. They don't post everything that they receive. And I guess it's the same for big platforms, they can. It's a company's choice where you draw the line. It's a company's choice if you want to still be working in Russia. It's a company's choice. It's not a country's choice. So I think we have to remember, for 20 years ago, we didn't have the opportunity to communicate as we have today. So I think freedom of speech, we have a lot of freedom of speech, but if we don't intervene and remove the harmful content and the hate speech, a lot of people won't use the freedom of expression. And I think that's also an issue.
And obviously there are examples of one platform where it can be a single individual who makes the choice because they just buy it and introduce whatever rules they want.
True.
I think we have time for one more quick question from the floor here. Should we go? Can we have a mic here at the front? Or, okay.
Hello, thank you very much. It was really inspiring. So my name is Asla. I'm representing UN Women Ukraine country office. And so you have noted cyber violence is a reflection of the real reality on the ground in the field. So no difference in Ukraine, where cyberspace is currently used as a battleground. So the UN Women has conducted a research over the last year where we have actually looked into ICT facilitated violence in Europe and Central Asia region. And around 12,000 women have been interviewed, and among the 12 countries, unfortunately, Ukraine has the highest percentage when it comes to the percentage of women who have encountered some form of ICT facilitated violence. And the real exact percentage is 75% of women interviewed. And this is a very scary picture for us, especially for a country where there is yet no legal groundwork. It is not mature enough. And what we are doing as young women, we are right now designing nationwide cyber security. Actually, we look at not only at the cyber violence at the individual level, but at the institutional and at community level as well. And we are designing and incubating a program to address it in a holistic way. And we are having consultations with the government, with the private sector, with the civil society, with the survivors to understand how to approach that. And there are two motivations to do that, because currently the women are leading so much in Ukraine when it comes to humanitarian efforts, when it comes to economic recovery, when it comes to social cohesion. And unfortunately, cyber violence is being used to demoralize them. And secondly, we do expect that sooner or later the elections will take place in Ukraine. And all the women who are currently taking on different leadership roles will be running for elections, and we do expect more and more women to come to the politics in the next elections. And of course, we do know the scenarios and examples from the other countries, and we want to be prepared for the scenarios such as these women politicians are being subjected to cyber violence. So when we are employing this ecosystem approach where we are trying to bring different stakeholders to the table, we do identify certain areas of entry. One of the stakeholder group that we do have a bit of difficulty when it comes to big tech companies who do have a lot of capacity when it comes to analyzing insights and data.
So sorry, can we get to the
And is there an example, or is there any type of an opportunity for us, for Meta and international organizations to collaborate for example, where the big companies share data and insights, so that actors such as us, we can design and support the civil society and government to implement tailored solutions, localized solutions.
Okay, Michaela, I'll ask you to, only you're going to answer that, and you're going to do it in 30 seconds. I'm really sorry. But I didn't want to cut you off because what you're saying was incredibly interesting. If it was anyone else, I would have stopped them. But you've got 30 seconds.
I think with regards to the possibility of collaboration, you can definitely speak to me on the side, so I can take your contacts and pass it on to the colleagues that deal with Central and Eastern Europe. When it comes to the availability of data, I think that an important thing to mention, I'll try to stay within 30 seconds, I think I won't, about data related to gender-based violence is that it's very difficult to measure. Janine was hinting it at the beginning in our presentation, but it's, and also I think it links to what Miliana was saying about the intersectionality. Gender-based violence is not only gender-based violence, it's about a lot of different things. So it's very difficult for companies like ours to aggregate and saying this is gender-based violence. It might be gender-based, it might be based on the religious, it might be based, like I suspect is the case in your situation, on the fact that these women are not only women, but they're Ukrainian women, and they are women that are obviously from a country that is under attack, from a country which is very, very strong in cyber attacks. So obviously that can be part of a bigger effort in that space, and as also answered by the fact that the country is dealing with it through a cybersecurity action plan. So it's a very complex matter, wasn't 30 seconds, I know. Sorry.
That's okay, that was more than 30 seconds. But again, it was interesting, I didn't want to stop it. But sadly, I do have to stop it because I know that some people really want their coffee. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to everyone who spoke on the panel from the floor, to the questions, and to those of you who submitted your questions on Slido. We're going to go take a break now, but please, one final round of applause for everyone who spoke. You're free to go.